it sounds like you hold to like salvation does not exist outside the Eastern Orthodox Church, but it is possible that someone can have a mystical experience.
God can join people too.
God can join people to church,
like
the thief on the cross. So then if someone is looking at which church to join, there's 8 churches that all claim apostolic succession and to be the one true church, right? I can't name them all off the top, but I know Oriental Orthodox,
Gotcha,
right? So on and so forth. So they all claim to be the one true church. They all have apostolic succession, but they're not all in communion with each other. How does someone decipher what is the one and true church if salvation only exists in one true church?
Yeah, I mean, this is a case where evidences and history are necessary. It's not going to be something a priori or self-evident. You would have to get into the history of the church. There's just really no other way around it. So I think one thing that Roman Catholicism tries to do is answer that question you just asked by putting forward the idea of a pope as the easy solution.
Yeah,
right?
we got a pope.
We got the guy. Problem solved,
Yep,
right?
yep.
But then if you're in the Roman Catholic world for a while, as I was for many years, you begin to realize that wasn't as easily answered as I thought because, well, now wait a minute, don't we have to also interpret the Pope's writings? And there's all these tiers of status of, well, this is magisterial and this is, ordinary magisterium and this is ordinary but not magisterium. And so there's all these tiers and it becomes a very laborious exercise when you have 10,000 pages of like papal stuff and councils to sift through versus what the car salesman approach to Roman Catholicism and the pop apologetics world sells. So anyway, I lived that throughout my 20s, and that's a different issue. But I think the easiest way to answer the question you're asking is to look at the 7/8 ecumenical councils of the first millennium.
Do you hold to 7 or 8?
Well, the reason I say 7/8 is that the first 7 are strictly theological, and they're the ones that most people, the Roman Catholic and Protestant world, will talk about the ecumenical councils. But no, we believe in 9 if you count the Palamite synods.
Okay.
And the reason the Palamite synods are they've been received through the whole Orthodox canonical world as authoritative, even though they weren't ecumenical in the sense of like all of the bishops and all the provinces or whatever. It was just they were Byzantine synods to discuss the theology of St. Gregory Palamas versus the Roman Catholic Filioquist position. So for us, those Palamite synods just count as the 9th ecumenical council. But we also have pan-Orthodox synods and things that we also consider normative, even if they're not, quote, infallible. For us, it's like your local bishop isn't infallible, but he's a normative authority.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Same way that probably a Protestant would consider like a minister, right? He has a normative authority, but he's not necessarily infallible.
Yeah. We believe in authority
right.
outside of Scripture. We just don't believe in any infallible authority out of Scripture. Which you know that because you were a Protestant. I want you guys to know, Occupied Till I Come, 60-day devotional on sale for our big Father's Day sale. 35 days in the Old Testament, 25 days in the New Testament. This is where we actually transition into the New Testament, day 36. And what's cool about this is we have a reading that you go through. There's a verse here that kind of summarizes the reading, and then there is a additional chapter of reading with custom journal prompts at the end of each reading. So there's also a section for prayer requests. I always recommend you keep track of your prayers. Why are we telling you guys about this? Well, to show off our brand new, amazing overhead camera, but because we're doing our biggest sale ever. Well, excuse me, not our biggest sale this year. I think our biggest sale since Black Friday or Christmas, and this is $22. We usually have these upwards of $40. They're pretty much 50% off, available right now, and along with our entire Priest Provider Protector collection. So Father's Day always gets slept on. Don't sleep on fathers. Go scoop your father, your grandfather, your mentor, your pastor. Get them something. Get something for yourself. Every time you put this on, you're reminding yourself what it is that you are called to as a man of God, to be a priest, provider, protector of your home. We also have the individual pieces. We got some puzzles on here. We got the long sleeves. We got our cheapest hoodie we've ever made, $45 hoodie, same blank as this oversized tee, this is the one I'm wearing, lane 7. So go to blessgod.shop. Get that now. I think you guys will appreciate it. Get your Father's Day shopping done. Like, knock it out. Don't worry about it later.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of delineating between, so Anglicans, Coptics, Assyrians, Roman Catholics, some Lutherans, and Eastern Orthodox would all claim apostolic succession, and we would admit that some of those groups, like Roman Catholics and Coptics, are ancient. Mm-hmm. But it's a question of ecclesial authority in the history of the church and what the ecumenical councils actually contain in their normative theology and process. Yeah.
So you would give apostolic succession to Anglicans and Lutherans?
No, I was just listing the groups that claim it.
Got it.
And I'm saying that the only way to suss out between those would be to go to the councils themselves.
Okay.
And see what the canons teach.
Okay.
And what the process of the councils was. For example, we believe in the Orthodox Church, we believe in the apostolic canons. That's like the first collection of canon law. So that lays down principles that were accepted throughout the East, including the Deuterocanon, and the way that a bishop is elected is local. So there's nothing to do, for example, in the apostolic canons with the papacy.
Top down. It's more bottom up, it sounds like. Is that fair?
Yeah. And it's episcopate that's decentralized. And that was the normative church law in the East throughout the whole 300s.
Sure.
Same time in the West, when we look at the Western synods in church law, whether it's Council of Rome, Pope Damasus, Augustine, etc., Carthaginian councils, it reflects almost the exact same attitude in the West for the normative church law in terms of the Deuterocanon being accepted, in terms of the election of bishops. Even though the West had the Patriarch of Rome, the Pope, like we don't see this attitude of Vatican I infallibility. So, in other words, when you start looking at apostolic canons and the canons of the ecumenical councils, I would argue that's the easiest, quickest way
to determine what is the
suss out
church. Got
that
it.
question.
What about, I know some true Orthodox claim to be more aligned to these councils than Eastern Orthodox. Have you engaged with the true Orthodox? What is your thoughts on the true Orthodox? Because they kind of have a lot of what you're describing, but they say, but we're even more hardcore and we take these councils even more seriously.
Yeah, the problem is my good buddy David Erhan, he's done a couple good videos rebutting this. So people could go, if they want a longer treatment, you could look at David Erhan's videos on his channel that address the true Orthodox claims. This is a very, very tiny, I mean, it's almost non-existent in the real world. I mean, I've seen one chapel in my travels across the country of an actual one of these groups. So it's all, I mean, even if you did want to go that route, like you would basically not have a church unless you were in Florida. I think they have one in Florida. But aside from that, it would mean essentially that all the canonical churches have failed, and it's basically a Donatist type position. So I would argue, first of all, Donatism would mean an end of the episcopacy, and the church is basically dead.
Because it's smaller? Because it's
almost non-existent. The minuscule groups that do exist, they're all out of communion with each other. There's probably 5 groups that are all not in communion. But beyond that, the attitude, this gets really nuanced and niche, but the attitude is very similar to the Roman Catholic mindset of Sedevacantists and the way they view canon law, that if one person, say, commits a sin or an error, the idea is like it's a light switch that everybody in communion with them, it's all blacked out. So there's no grace. And that is a Donatist position, because what it's denying is the authority of synods to make the affirmation or the declaration of a heresy or a schism. So the highest authority in the Orthodox Church is bishops in a synod.
Okay.
And you can't erase all of that and say, we don't accept any synods or any bishops. We're going to create a parallel episcopate or bishopric. That's classic Donatism, classic schism.
Okay. Well, what if someone says, well, yeah, but Matthew 7 says the wide is the road that leads to destruction, narrow, go through the narrow gate, and hey, so what? They don't have a ton of congregations, so what? They're not super prevalent. Maybe that's the real remnant, and maybe that, like,
well, but you could never have a situation, because of the rest of the teachings of the New Testament, Book of Acts, Acts 15, and what we believe are proofs of apostolic succession. You could never have a loss of the synodal reality of the church. So that position would require essentially there no longer being synods. They're no longer being authoritative declarations from a synod, because those positions are premised on all the synods in world orthodoxy being apostate. So there's no longer synodal authority. There's just like a random dude in a trailer park in Florida who says, I'm the bishop that's the true remaining bishop. So in other words,
can he appoint more bishops? Like, what if there was a massive
that's what
explosion?
I'm saying. Like, bishopric in the canons is appointed by 2 bishops or a metropolitan. That's the apostolic canons, how bishops come about.
Yeah.
Right. So
I'm saying if this true Orthodox church, which I don't know much about them to be transparent, but if they were to hypothetically have an explosion of 2 bishops coming together, making 2 more bishops, and all of a sudden it grows and there's more congregations and it explodes.
What I'm saying is that it's already negated because they've negated the synodal reality of the church.
Okay.
So once you've denied the synods, then
you feel like they're a dead church.
It's like Protestantism for us.
So you would put them in the same category as a Protestant.
Well, I mean, it would depend on like this. I mean, to get really nuanced, like they wouldn't be identical to Protestant because they don't hold all to Protestant ideologies and doctrines, but it would be equivalent to the mindset of a Protestant that there's no synods anymore, and there's just this guy over here and this guy over here. Does that make sense? In other words, the Orthodox Church, let me make an analogy to the papacy. Like a Roman Catholic would say, the papacy could never go away, right? And if you're a sedevacantist, you've adopted a position where you can never have a pope again outside of some miraculous event because all of the cardinals are also Vatican II apostates. Does that make sense?
So the whole thing has died away.
The episcopacy basically died, but even though you have a sedevacantist bishop, they can't elect a pope.
So you would put the true Orthodox in a similar category.
They're in a similar situation in that rather than denying a pope, there's no longer synods.
Okay.
All of the Orthodox synodal synods are invalidated and gone.
Got it. Okay.
So the church has fundamentally lost its elements and its constituent elements.
Okay. I mean, I guess that makes sense. I think that I'm sure they'll have a response for this for those of them that
they would probably say something like, "We'll make a synod." Or something. Like we'll collect together, but they've never done that. So.
Hey, thank you so much for checking out the video. Please be sure to comment below and subscribe and all that good stuff. And check out this other video that YouTube seems to be recommending just for you. Let me know if they nailed it. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.